just to give you an idea, of course, when you go click, it doesn't appear like this immediately in the camera. So what you're doing is you take a picture and you then darken down the shadows to the point whereby anything that's in shadow is black and only the highlights are left. What I will do now, actually, I'll show you from a completely different kind of photo how you can do that. So let's just close that for a moment. And what I'll do is I'll just show you with this picture I did of Luke. Now, Luke's a wonderful, this is Luke Fitch, he's a wonderful portrait artist, also the son of Douglas Fitch, potter, who is cropped up in pictures you might have seen in earlier episodes. Now, what I want to do with it, now, I spent the day with Luke talking, so we spent the day specifically talking about light and how light impacts what you're seeing. When he started out doing portraits, a lot of the portraits he did, he just sort of did in a kind of ambient light, so there were no real shadows. He was going for likeness, and I got chatting with him. I'm talking about the notion of how shadow, I always feel, is where you get a lot of depth and emotion, is in the shadows. This led to the idea of setting up a day where there's like a kind of mentoring scheme where I spent a day with him, talking to him about light. And at this point, we were in a room, there was a window off to one side, we're in a kind of slight attic room. And I was moving around him, photographing him from different angles, showing him how the light fell on his face. So what I want to show you with this one, so if the first thing we can do is just turn that to black and white. Okay. And then if what we do is now there's two ways we can do this. We can do it with the levels or the curves. They're both pretty much of a muchness. But what I do, if it's with the levels, I take the slider on the left and I start bringing it down. And as I bring it down, the darks get darker, but the lights are staying at the same consistency. So if I bring that, say, down to there, and now what we have is it's become very black and white, almost kind of yin yang. Similarly, if I do take the curves, if you've got your over on the right here, you'll see the curves. If I sort of stick this somewhere around the middle and then drag it down, I can do that until the background just disappears. I mean, within this, I can, if I want, I can maybe lighten up the collar a little bit. Let's just keep that on the inside, just to bring a little bit of extra texture into there if I wanted. Maybe a little bit. Will I pick up any extra highlights in the hair? Yeah, a little bit up there. Here I'm just for those, I'm using the dodge tool back on a copied layer, which allows me to lighten up the mid-tones and bring a little bit more extra texture into here. But so what you can see here then is we've got that same kind of effect. Now, what I might also do for this is a bit more rule of thirds. Crop this in a bit, maybe something like that. If I do something like that, now I think that makes a more interesting crop. And for those who remember the notion of diagonals, we've now got these, got the lovely diagonal line coming up here, and then diagonals of his collar going up while his head is going at a counter diagonal. So it feels like there's quite a lot of energy in there, but it's very strong. It's very, very strong darks, completely black darks and completely white highlight area. It's a very contrasty photo. But again, because it's a window light, it's not a hard cut-off where the light ends and the shadow begins. You have a gradient, you have a movement through it. So you notice here that it's not going from complete white to complete black. You are moving through tonal greys as well. So that's the kind of trick for doing that. So if we then go back to Alexandra, you can now see that that's how I did it. So with the black backcloth, shooting her straight on, but with the light to one side and slightly behind her, then created this lovely, beautiful soft light hitting the side of her, and then in Photoshop I brought down the curves afterwards. And then of course obviously a bit of touching up and moving about. So that's really what I wanted to talk to you specifically, show you those pictures. In a minute I'm going to talk about the notion of life drawing and how that influenced why I did this. But before we do that, if you found this useful, let your friends know and hit subscribe.